Hey guys, tonight we're standing at the edge of the Nile, where the air smells faintly of wet reeds and yesterday's fish. It's early morning, so early that the palm fronds still glisten with dew, and somewhere beyond the slow, shuffling donkeys, you hear the soft mewl of something small and cunning slipping between the granaries. That's your first clue. This isn't just a story about ancient Egypt, it's a story about how one of the cleverest species on Earth quietly clawed its way into the center of human civilization. And, spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive this bureaucracy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments below. I love knowing where in the world my little midnight historians are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the fertile floodplain, sandals sinking into soft mud as the Nile glows gold with the first light. Farmers are already up, tossing grain into the air like offerings, though half of it never makes it to the baskets. Because, darting between the stalks, eyes sharp as green glass, are the real rulers of this kingdom, cats. They're not pets, not yet. They're wild hunters, lithe and cautious, born of the desert's heat and the night's silence. The African wildcat, Felis sylvestris libica, is the ancestor of every house cat you've ever known, and here in ancient Egypt, they've found their paradise. The Egyptians have stored their precious grain in thick mud brick silos to survive the long months of drought. But grain attracts rats, and rats attract snakes. And that attracts cats. You crouch low near one of the silos, watching the early morning hunt. A striped wildcat moves with perfect stillness. Its tail flicks once, then twice, and in a blink, the rat is gone. The farmers, who have long since stopped pretending to hate them, mutter approvingly. They leave scraps behind intentionally now. A little gratitude for pest control. Here's your first bureaucratic irony. Egypt's earliest agricultural records, from around 3100 BCE, are obsessed with counting things: grain, cattle, slaves, beer. But not cats. Not yet. These small hunters slip through the ledgers like smoke. They're everywhere and nowhere, quietly shaping Egypt's prosperity without anyone writing their names down. You wipe sweat from your neck, watching a young scribe walk by with a tally stick. He's muttering numbers: barley, goats, donkeys, but behind him, two cats trail like silent shadows. They aren't his pets, but they might as well be his co-workers. And though he doesn't know it, those cats are about to rewrite thousands of years of human behavior. Historians still argue whether cats truly domesticated themselves, or whether Egyptians lured them in deliberately. One camp says it was convenience: cats saw a free buffet and stuck around. The other says it was collaboration: humans noticed cats' hunting prowess and started encouraging them, offering food, warmth, and a bit of affection in return. Either way, it worked. Cats figured out that if they purred and blinked just right, humans would not only tolerate them but start talking to them like tiny gods. And Egyptians, bless them, took that very literally. By midday, the city hums with noise: markets clanging, papyrus rustling, priests chanting under the sun. You wander through Thebes, still centuries away from its glory, but already drenched in myth. Children chase kittens through narrow lanes, and fishmongers toss bones to the cats loitering in the shade. No one calls them pests. In fact, you hear laughter, they keep the snakes away, someone says, and maybe the evil spirits too. That last part isn't just a joke. You can feel it in the air, an early superstition forming, something half practical, half divine. When night falls, and the desert breathes its cool air across the Nile, cats become symbols of mystery, eyes glowing like twin lanterns, slipping between realms of shadow and light. Egyptians had a knack for noticing beauty in the useful, and danger in the familiar. Cats were both. By the Old Kingdom around 2600 BCE, cats begin appearing in art, not yet the elegant, almond-eyed beauties of later dynasties, but sketchy, unsure outlines. One early carving shows a cat under a chair, licking its paw beside a woman who looks completely unimpressed. Another shows a hunter with a cat perched on his shoulder like a tiny leopard. They're not pets in the modern sense, but they've moved into the household orbit. They've learned the ancient trick: stay close enough to be helpful, but distant enough to seem magical. You can almost smell the ink and hear the scratch of the reed pen as scribes record crop yields and temple donations. But you notice something odd: tiny paw prints pressed into drying clay tablets. A careless cat, or maybe a proud one, walking across someone's official work. Archaeologists have found those prints little reminders that even in the most serious corners of early Egyptian bureaucracy, cats left their mark. Literally. There's a joke whispered among scribes: a rat steals your grain, a thief steals your coins, but only a cat steals your heart and your papyrus. You can imagine the chuckles in some dimly lit chamber as they compare smudged records, paw prints, and all. By now, the cat-human relationship is entering a new phase, one that will outlast dynasties. These animals aren't just tolerated, they're admired. Farmers see them as guardians of food. Sailors bring them aboard boats to protect grain stores from vermin. Temple priests, ever alert to symbols, start associating their grace and vigilance with divine protection. In the quiet moments between the chanting and the scratching quills, you realize what's happening. Egypt, the land that invented paper, taxes, and mummification, is about to invent another absurdly organized idea: a spiritual and bureaucratic system for cats. Because the Egyptians never did anything halfway. If they loved something, they'd write it in stone, wrap it in linen, and give it a god's name. As the sun sinks, the Nile turns copper. A soft chorus of mews echoes from the village rooftops. Cats curl in doorways, licking their paws, watching humans with that smug look you know so well, the one that says, "Yes, you're feeding me, but we both know who's really in charge." You glance at a scribe's tablet one last time, the ink drying under flickering lamplight. There's a small cat sitting squarely on the edge, staring straight at him. He sighs and moves his hand around it, because of course he does. It's a gesture repeated for 5,000 years, humans adjusting their work to accommodate cats. And somewhere, maybe in the faint hum of papyrus scrolls and flickering oil lamps, you can almost hear the first bureaucratic whisper of feline authority: we should probably keep track of them. You wake again to the sound of bells, soft, rhythmic, metallic notes swaying in the morning air. The smell of incense lingers. Somewhere nearby, a priest chants to a small bronze idol shaped like a woman with a cat's head. You blink at the light spilling through a temple doorway and realize you've wandered into the moment cats stopped being mere hunters and became gods. It didn't happen overnight. Egypt didn't wake up one morning and decide that cats were divine. No, it started with something quieter: affection. You can picture it, a farmer's wife, stroking a cat's fur after a long day of harvesting. The animal purrs, a sound like a living charm against the desert silence. That vibration, steady and soothing, feels like a promise: safety, balance, protection. And the Egyptians, who built an entire civilization on patterns of order and harmony, took notice. The line between affection and worship blurred early. By the time the Middle Kingdom rolled around, cats were officially part of family life. There are paintings of them sitting neatly beneath dining tables, their tails curled just so, eyes half-lidded in regal boredom. You see children playing with kittens, noble women feeding them bits of fish, and even men hunting ducks with cats leaping beside them like trained falcons. Historians still argue whether cats were truly domesticated in Egypt or whether they merely tolerated human company. Some say Egyptians selectively bred them for their looks and behavior, turning wild hunters into social companions. Others think cats simply realized that humans were good providers of food, shelter, and flattery and decided to stick around. Either way, the cats won. You walk through a dusty street in Bastet, one of Egypt's oldest cities. It's noisy, crowded, and smells faintly of fish and lotus oil. Cats weave through the chaos like royalty, dodging merchants' feet, brushing against priests' robes, leaping effortlessly onto baskets of dates. No one shoos them away. Instead, you hear greetings, soft coos, affectionate calls. Someone even bows slightly as a cat passes. And why not? The goddess Bastet, originally depicted as a lioness, has begun to take on gentler, more domestic features. Her image evolves from fierce protector to elegant cat-headed woman. She becomes a symbol of home, fertility, and pleasure, the divine embodiment of everything that makes life in Egypt bearable. You step into one of her temples, and it feels less like a place of fear and more like a sanctuary. Cool stone walls shimmer with hieroglyphs showing sleek cats lounging beside goddesses, their tails curling like question marks. The air hums with purring. Real cats live in the temple, fed and tended by priests. Offerings of milk, jewelry, and tiny carved mice sit at their feet. There's a fringe story whispered among visitors of cats that refuse food until the priests recite certain hymns, or of temple cats that gather in rows when something momentous is about to happen. Modern historians roll their eyes at these tales, but still, you can't help feeling that Egypt's cats had learned how to time their entrances for maximum dramatic effect. You pause near a mural of Bastet herself, sunlight flickering over gold paint. Her eyes are outlined in kohl, her smile serene, her ears alert. In her hands, she holds a sistrum, a musical rattle, and an ankh, symbol of life. It's a strange combination, music and immortality. But it fits. Cats are creatures of rhythm and resurrection. They vanish, reappear, and somehow always land on their feet. By now, the bureaucracy is catching up. Temple officials begin keeping records of offerings made in Bastet's honor: grain, wine, linen, and yes, even cats. Some are bred within the temple, others are donated by the wealthy seeking divine favor. The Egyptians keep receipts for everything, even devotion. You can almost picture the papyrus scrolls labeled feline donations, year 9 of the reign of Ramses. You wander further in, where rows of cat statues line the walls. They range from tiny amulets to life-sized bronzes. Some are carved from black basalt, polished to a shine so deep you can see your reflection. Others are painted gold and decorated with earrings, collars, and engraved names. Lady of Grace. Whisper of Ra. She who hunts at dawn. It's hard not to smile. Egypt, the land of pyramids and plagues, has managed to turn domestic cats into celebrity icons. Somewhere out there, a scribe is probably drafting a letter about a nobleman's cat that refused to sit upon the lesser cushion. You catch a faint meow near the offering table. A cat leaps up, inspecting the array of bowls filled with milk and roasted fish. A priest nearby doesn't shoo it away. Instead, he bows slightly and murmurs, "She accepts." You realize, with a chill, that this isn't symbolic to them. They believe the goddess manifests through these living animals. Every cat is a divine vessel, a potential envoy of Bastet herself. There's a mainstream historical fact that seals this reverence. Egypt's city of Bastet, modern-day Tel Basta, became one of the most popular pilgrimage destinations in the ancient world. Herodotus wrote about it centuries later, describing festivals so massive that crowds drank more wine than in any other place in Egypt. Tens of thousands of pilgrims traveled there yearly, singing, dancing, and honoring Bastet and by extension, every purring creature in the kingdom. You step back into the sunlight, and the scene feels almost modern. Cats lounging on steps. Merchants selling figurines. Children offering scraps to strays. It's like a cat cafe, but with hieroglyphs. And yet, for all this affection, there's a chilling undertone of control. The temples don't just love cats, they manage them. They track breeding pairs, feedings, even burials. Each animal is catalogued, tagged in ink or with beads, and accounted for in temple scrolls. Bureaucracy seeps in, because this is Egypt, and if something matters, someone's going to make a list. One quirky tidbit: archaeologists found a tomb mural where a cat appears to be wearing a small gold earring. At first, they thought it was symbolic jewelry. Then they found actual cat skeletons with pierced ears. The Egyptians, apparently, loved accessorizing their divine companions. As twilight settles, you watch the city glow amber. Cats slip through the streets, tails raised high, confident in their supremacy. They're worshipped, pampered, recorded, and painted, but they're still cats. They hunt, they vanish, they ignore commands. You sit by the riverbank, listening to the distant sound of temple bells. The bureaucracy of worship is tightening, and yet it feels oddly familiar, like the beginning of every great administrative mess. Somewhere, a priest is probably filing a form about missing cat, suspected reincarnation pending. The stars emerge one by one, and the moon rises over the Nile, turning the water silver. You realize Egypt has created something extraordinary, not just a religion, but a system where devotion, art, and paperwork meet under the watchful eyes of cats. They've gone from silent hunters to sacred beings, from unrecorded shadows to divine citizens. And the story, somehow, is only just beginning. You're standing in a temple courtyard at dawn, and the world smells of ink, incense, and cat fur. Scribes shuffle past you carrying reed pens and baskets of papyrus rolls, their sandals whispering against the stone. A lazy feline sprawls across one of the scrolls, paw dangling like it owns the place, which, frankly, it does. Because by now, Egypt has made the one move no civilization can resist. Once it falls in love with something, it's started keeping records. You can almost hear the bureaucratic gears turning. If cats are sacred, they must be accounted for. If they're divine messengers, they must be monitored. And if they're wandering around temples with the casual entitlement of minor nobility, well, they need paperwork. So begins one of the strangest administrative traditions in human history, the cat bureaucracy of ancient Egypt. A low-ranking temple clerk sighs beside you, quill tapping the edge of his tablet. He's writing what might be the earliest version of a census, not for people, but for temple cats. The heading reads something like felines of the house of Bastet, recorded under the 18th year of the reign of Thutmose III. He lists names, markings, feeding schedules, even preferred sleeping spots. The man mutters, white with gold eyes, prefers the north window. You catch yourself smiling. The world's first cat database. Historians still argue whether this level of management was sincere devotion or just a job creation scheme for priests. One camp insists it was about spiritual duty, another says it was about temple funding. After all, every cat registered meant more offerings, more donations, more gold in the coffers. But to the Egyptians, there was no contradiction between piety and paperwork. Order it was a divine principle. To love the gods properly, you had to be organized about it. And cats, as their earthly avatars, deserved nothing less than official documentation. You follow a procession of priests deeper into the temple, where hundreds of cats lounge on columns, ledges, and altars. Each one is tagged with a collar of beads or metal. You notice inscriptions, tiny hieroglyphs denoting ownership or temple affiliation. Property of Bastet's shrine, Bubastis division. Do not disturb during meditation hours. At one point, a young priest hurries past, clutching a bundle of squirming kittens wrapped in linen. You ask what he's doing. He sighs. New arrivals. They need to be recorded before feeding. You peek into his bundle, tiny whiskered faces peeking back, utterly unimpressed by bureaucracy. The temple itself feels alive. Every hallway echoes with soft purrs and the faint scratching of claws. The scent of oil lamps mingles with fish stew, an offering for the sacred cats. You notice something else: 2 rows of little clay bowls stacked neatly beside a stone basin. Each bowl has a name painted on it. Neferset. Shadow. Lady Paw. You can't help it, you laugh quietly. Ancient Egypt invented personalized cat dishes 3,000 years before etc. By the time you reach the archives, your amusement fades into awe. The room is vast, filled with papyrus rolls stacked like bricks. Each one documents some aspect of feline life: births, deaths, donations, even behavioral notes. Cat of priest Henut suffered fever, offerings increased. Black cat sighted in north courtyard, interpreted as favorable omen. It's like an ancient veterinary log, crossed with a religious diary. And here's the wild part: fragments of such administrative records have actually been found: lists of temple animals, notes on feeding costs, scribal tallies of offerings. Egypt's obsession with accounting didn't stop at humans, it extended to anything of value. And cats were worth more than most treasures. Outside, the marketplace hums with a different kind of feline fervor. Sculptors carve cat figurines from bronze and faience, their stalls glittering in the sun. Merchants brag about their goods, modeled after the divine cats of Bastet's temple. You watch a woman carefully examine a figurine, turning it over like a relic. She asks for one with greener eyes. The merchant nods for good luck and health. Another ledger is filled, another coin exchanged. A quirky tidbit: some tombs show cats wearing tiny collars with engraved charms, sometimes depicting the moon or a lotus flower. Archaeologists think these were meant as spiritual ID tags, proof that the cat belonged to a certain temple or patron. Ancient Egypt, the land of pyramids, had basically invented pet licensing. As afternoon light filters through the temple's lattice screens, you follow a group of officials to the records chamber. They're discussing quotas. Yes, quotas for cat food. The offering of fish must match the census count, one says. If we have 137 cats, we require 411 measures of fish per week. The precision is staggering. You half expect them to invent cat taxes next. And, well, they almost did. Some papyri mention penalties for underfeeding temple cats or mishandling offerings. Priests caught neglecting divine animals could be fined or demoted. The state took this seriously. In Egypt, feeding a cat wasn't an act of kindness, it was a civic duty. You linger near a small courtyard as dusk falls. The air cools, and the temple cats begin their nightly patrol. They slink between statues, tails raised, inspecting their territory. One stops at your feet, looks up, and meows a sharp, commanding sound. It's not a plea. It's an order. You find yourself bowing, just a little. The bureaucracy, for all its absurdity, has accomplished something remarkable. It has made cats into citizens of the sacred world. They have names, records, possessions, legal protections. They are both divine and administrative, filed somewhere between gods and livestock. You imagine the meeting where this started: some exasperated priest holding a paw-print-covered scroll, sighing, "If we're going to worship them, we should at least keep track." And everyone nodding, solemnly agreeing to make it official. One mainstream fact underscores this madness: in the late New Kingdom period, the priesthood had become one of Egypt's most powerful political forces. Temples owned vast lands, collected taxes, and maintained enormous bureaucracies. The feline cults were part of that machine, channeling devotion into data, worship into infrastructure. But here's the irony: you can feel it in the night air as the cats settle to sleep. Egypt may have organized its divine pets better than it organized its people. The moon rises, turning the temple's stonework silver. The scribes snuff out their lamps, one by one, until only the glow of cat eyes remains. You hear the faint scratching of claws against papyrus, maybe an accident, maybe a signature. And somewhere in the records, under cat census, year 18, someone has scribbled a single line in the margin: they no longer hunt rats. They hunt hearts. The temple is quiet now, but the air is thick with ritual. You step carefully over the patterned tiles, each engraved with tiny images of cats sitting regally beside hieroglyphs, eyes painted gold to catch the flicker of oil lamps. There is an almost tangible hum in the air, a vibration that seems to come from the very walls. Part of it is incense, part chanting, part cats. Hundreds of them, watching, judging, purring. You tiptoe past a bronze statue of Bastet, her cat head glimmering as though it breathes. In front of her, offerings are arranged meticulously: bowls of milk, freshly baked bread, fish wrapped in linen, and trinkets carved from ivory and faience. You realize quickly that cats don't just receive these gifts randomly. The offerings are recorded, counted, and allocated according to some invisible schedule. Priests carry reed pens in one hand, clay bowls in the other, muttering calculations as they distribute the sacred portions. It's the first time you notice the word ledger in the whispered conversations around you. Feline offerings, births, mummifications, temple duties, and even behavioral notes are all written down. A kitten caught misbehaving might have a note added: refused morning milk, inspect behavior. Cats, who once simply roamed, are now institutionalized. You can almost hear them sigh, curling themselves into the shapes humans assign. Historians still argue whether the meticulous accounting of feline offerings was purely religious devotion or a clever way to justify wealth and labor. The temple controlled lands, food, and artisans. Keeping the cats fed and sacred meant controlling the people who served them. Every sacred bowl of milk is a microcosm of bureaucratic power. You wander into the inner courtyard, where a black cat inspects a line of young kittens, perhaps checking if the next generation meets the standards of Bastet herself. Nearby, priests prepare the occasional funeral for the temple cats. Yes, you heard that right, there are funeral rites, complete with tiny coffins, incense, and offerings. Cats are mummified, wrapped in fine linen, sometimes with amulets for safe passage to the afterlife. One priest explains, almost apologetically, that even the smallest kitten receives its sacred duty. You stare at the tiny wrappings and think, only in Egypt would bureaucracy extend to the afterlife of cats. The fringe stories in temple lore are almost absurd. Some claim that cats were believed to communicate omens or divine messages. A hiss, a purr, or the direction a cat walked could be interpreted as guidance from Bastet. Modern scholars remain skeptical, yet these tales were taken seriously. Entire offerings were made in response to feline gestures, the timing of rituals adjusted based on cats' behavior. Outside, you notice how this system intersects with the larger Egyptian economy. Merchants sell cat figurines, collars, and tiny jewelry. Artisans carve cat-headed statues from bronze and gold. Families donate cats to temples hoping for favor in love, fertility, or protection against vermin. Taxes, you realize, are now indirectly linked to cats. A temple with more divine cats often wields more influence, more food, more land. Every meow becomes a potential measure of social capital. You pause to examine one small detail: inscriptions on clay bowls marking the preferred offerings for specific cats. One bowl reads, "Shadow of Ra milk at dawn, fish at dusk." Another, "Golden whisker linen cushion only, sacred grain, no fish." You blink. The bureaucracy has reached the point where individual personalities are formally documented. A cat, in essence, has a schedule, preferences, and duties. A quirky tidbit that makes you chuckle: some cats reportedly were given official titles, almost like court positions. Guardian of the granary, protector of the southern courtyard, inspector of offerings. You imagine the cats strutting around like they understand, issuing silent judgments. They do. Even the funerals are bureaucratic masterpieces. When a cat dies, it's not merely mourned. Scribes record its age, lineage, and temple service. Priests chant precise formulas to guide its spirit. Offerings are calculated, and sometimes replacement kittens are ceremonially appointed to inherit the deceased's duties. You marvel at the organization Egypt has created: a divine HR system for felines. And yet, through it all, the cats remain cats. They nap, they hunt, they hiss, they ignore commands. One black cat suddenly leaps onto a priest's shoulder, knocking over a carefully measured bowl of milk. The priest sighs, mutters, and scribbles another line in the ledger. Discipline, like devotion, is always tempered with flexibility. You pause under the moonlight streaming through an open archway, watching a procession of cats slip silently through the temple corridors. Their shadows stretch long across the stone floors. They become intertwined with religious practice, social order, and civic bureaucracy. Cats are now both living creatures and living symbols, subjects, sacred beings, and overseers all at once. The smell of incense and fish lingers as the night deepens. You realize this is the point where devotion transforms into governance. Cats are more than pets or even deities, they are the embodiment of an organizational genius. By venerating them, the Egyptians have built a system that tracks, measures, and sanctifies life itself, one purr at a time. You're walking along a narrow stone path between two temple courtyards, and the air is thick with the scent of incense and fish. Somewhere in the shadows, a sleek tabby stalks a rat, moving with such precision it's almost surgical. You can't help but marvel. Egypt has created a world where cats are simultaneously divine, bureaucratic, and lethal. And now you see the consequences of this peculiar system. Accidents happen. Sometimes a human missteps, steps on a sacred paw, or neglects to feed a temple cat properly. The laws protecting these animals are severe. You flinch as you overhear a conversation between two priests. One recounts how a minor official lost his position for accidentally harming a cat, even though it was an honest mistake. Historians still argue whether these protections were purely for spiritual reasons or as political theater, a way to assert temple authority over the populace. Either way, you realize quickly that a misstep could ruin your life. Cats are also deeply intertwined with crime and punishment. If someone stole from the temple or disrupted ritual practices, it was believed a cat might reveal their guilt. Some temples even kept watch cats to patrol the grounds at night, their glowing eyes serving as both deterrent and spiritual witness. One priest whispers to you about a cat that chased down a thief, circled him 3 times, then hissed judgment. You imagine the official sweating under the feline stare, already considering his confessions. And then there are the funerals. The deceased cats of temples weren't buried haphazardly. They were mummified, adorned with jewelry, and accompanied by offerings. You peer into a cat mummy, wrapped carefully in fine linen with a golden amulet pressed to its chest. This wasn't merely ritual, it was an early form of legal documentation, an acknowledgement that even in death, cats retained their divine and bureaucratic importance. A quirky detail you notice: some mummified cats were buried with small papyri listing their service records. A cat that oversaw the granary might have a scroll noting its efficiency at rodent control. Another, known for accompanying priests during ceremonies, might have a hymn dedicated to its loyalty. The Egyptians, you realize, have essentially invented posthumous performance reviews. Outside the temples, cats still exercise subtle influence. Merchants with favored felines attract more customers. Families with temple-donated cats gain social prestige. Even pharaohs take note. You hear a tale probably embellished of a royal cat whose purr allegedly cured a minor illness. The event was recorded on a stela, marking the feline's official intervention in court affairs. Historians still debate whether these stories of miracle cats are genuine accounts or clever propaganda. Either way, the pattern is clear: cats were indispensable, not only as protectors of food stores and spiritual intermediaries, but also as instruments of social control. They enforced respect, moderated behavior, and subtly manipulated human actions, all without so much as a command. You wander into a marketplace and see cats everywhere, lounging on rooftops, inspecting baskets of grain, weaving between legs. Merchants sell tiny statuettes, collars, and amulets engraved with their likenesses. Some children carry kittens with miniature golden collars, already training the next generation in the art of divine intimidation. The bureaucracy has grown outside the temple walls. Devotion and commerce are intertwined. One mainstream historical fact stands out: Egypt's legal codes included severe penalties for harming cats, even accidentally. Killing a feline could result in death, while neglect or mistreatment might lead to fines, labor, or exile. These laws elevated cats beyond pets or symbols. They were quasi-citizens under the protective umbrella of both divine and civic authority. You notice a stray black cat moving among the crowd, pausing to fix its golden eyes on a merchant. The merchant instinctively bows and offers a scrap of fish. The cat accepts and strolls off, leaving a faint trail of authority in its wake. It's the living embodiment of a system where power, devotion, and bureaucracy converge. And yet, in all this control and reverence, the cats remain untamed. Their independence is part of the Egyptian equation. They are adored, recorded, mummified, but never entirely domesticated. They are simultaneously subjects of the state, agents of divine will, and inscrutable, enigmatic beings. You realize, as the sun sets and the temple shadows lengthen, that Egypt's feline empire is both fragile and enduring. Bureaucracy ensures order, devotion provides legitimacy, and the cats themselves provide a charming unpredictability that no ledger can fully contain. Every scratch, purr, and leap is a reminder: in Egypt, even the smallest creatures wield influence, and sometimes that influence is stronger than the laws meant to contain it. Night drapes over the temple complex like a velvet curtain, and the air is thick with the smell of incense and sand. You walk along the outer walls, where cats patrol like silent sentinels, eyes glowing faintly under the torchlight. They move with purpose, though what that purpose is remains a mystery even to their human attendants. It's clear now: the bureaucracy, the devotion, the sacred offerings, all of it has transformed into a fully operational system. But as empires rise and fall, even the most meticulous cat administration cannot last forever. The decline begins subtly. Foreign invaders bring new gods, new customs, and new priorities. The temples that once thrived on feline offerings see their wealth siphoned off or redirected. Some cat statues are melted down for bronze, some sacred kittens are relocated or neglected. You trudge through partially abandoned courtyards, watching the cats navigate a shrinking network of authority. Their temples echo with silence, interrupted only by the occasional hiss or meow. Historians still argue whether the eventual decline of cat worship was primarily cultural or economic. Some believe that as new rulers consolidated power, cat-centric temples lost political influence. Others point to shifting religious trends, arguing that humans simply turned their attention to other divine figures while cats retained symbolic roles but lost bureaucratic priority. Either way, you can see the remnants of glory in the worn stones, the faded murals, and the scattered offerings. Even as centralized control fades, the feline influence persists. Cats continue their roles as protectors of homes, hunters of vermin, and symbols of domestic comfort. You observe them slipping through marketplaces, sunning themselves on walls, or quietly supervising children at play. In each gesture, you notice a lingering authority, a residue of centuries of structured devotion. The empire of meows never fully vanishes, it adapts, retreats, and survives in subtle ways. A fringe tidbit makes you chuckle. Some later Greek and Roman writers remarked on Egypt's devotion to cats, describing priests walking among silent feline judges, and noting that harming a cat could bring divine vengeance. These anecdotes may be exaggerated, yet they show the enduring perception of cats as creatures that wield power quietly but decisively. Even outsiders sense the legacy of bureaucratic worship. You follow a winding path to a small shrine where a single bronze cat statue still stands. Its gold eyes are dulled with time, but the aura of reverence remains. You kneel to examine offerings left by travelers who perhaps understand the ancient respect owed to these creatures. Tiny bowls of milk, bits of fish, and miniature figurines suggest that devotion, though transformed, survives. Mainstream historical fact reminds you that Egypt's cat cults were formally institutionalized as early as the New Kingdom, and archaeological evidence shows cats were mummified and ceremoniously buried for centuries. They were not casual pets, they were woven into the political, spiritual, and domestic fabric of civilization. Yet the cats remain aloof, the ultimate arbiters of their legacy. They do not demand gratitude, they accept it or ignore it at whim. You watch one silently patrol the temple wall, its tail high, ears alert, eyes gleaming like polished onyx. It pauses, then leaps gracefully into shadow, leaving no trace except a faint whisper of movement. As you turn to leave, the air hums softly with a memory of rituals, chants, and purrs. The bureaucratic scrolls may crumble, the temples may fade, but the essence of the system lingers. Cats continue to inspire awe, amusement, and meticulous documentation in ways that no human architect or administrator could fully control. You take a deep breath. The Nile glows faintly under moonlight, and distant cats call to one another across the quiet streets. You realize the empire of meows, in all its peculiar formality and devotion, has left an indelible mark. The rituals, the records, the offerings, they were not just acts of reverence, but the architecture of a society in which a small, cunning animal could shape human behavior, policy, and belief for millennia. Somewhere in the shadows, a black cat stretches, its tail curling like a question mark, and you think, perhaps this is the ultimate lesson of ancient Egypt. Civilization may rise and fall, empires may crumble, but cats, the divine, the bureaucratic, the mysterious, persist. And they do it on their own terms. The night stretches long and soft now, and you feel the weight of centuries pressing gently against your shoulders. You take a slow breath, letting the incense, the faint river smell, and the whispering echoes of purring cats settle into a calm rhythm. The temples are empty, the scribes gone, and yet their work lingers in subtle patterns, the paw prints pressed into clay, the tiny inscriptions on bowls, the ghost of a ledger that once tracked every whisker and tail curl. You drift through the streets of ancient Bastet, imagining the last candle flickering in a priestess chamber, the last temple cat curling atop a cool stone slab. Their eyes glimmer in the dark, catching the moonlight just right, and you realize that for all the bureaucracy, for all the rituals and mummifications, it was never really about control. It was about noticing, honoring, and weaving small, intelligent lives into the larger human story. Cats, in their silent, deliberate way, have always reminded us that devotion and organization can coexist with independence and whimsy. Even as empires crumble, even as temples fade into sand and stone, you hear them, the soft mew, the purr vibrating through the walls of memory, the agile shadows slipping silently across rooftops. The echoes of their authority are quiet, persistent, reassuring. You feel it in your chest, a steady rhythm that mirrors the gentle, undulating flow of the Nile itself. There's a certain magic in this lingering presence. You can almost imagine a cat stepping lightly onto your desk, demanding attention with the faintest tilt of the head. They are reminders of what civilization can achieve when it cherishes even the smallest creatures, the ones who move unnoticed through corridors of power. They are legacy, myth, and comfort rolled into fur and whiskers. And as the air cools and your eyes grow heavy, you realize the lesson is simple: reverence need not be loud, devotion need not be grandiose, and bureaucracy strange, meticulous, absurd can be an act of love. So you exhale slowly, letting the night's calm settle. The purrs fade into the background, a soft, lingering hum. The cats of Egypt, real and imagined, live on in whispers, shadows, and memory. And now, you can drift too, carried by the quiet authority of centuries-old paws and the soft hum of history's gentle heartbeat.